All right, in this video, we're going to look at the workflow of this soundboard. It can be overwhelming at first with all the buttons, all the knobs, but in the last video, I talked about the different sections: left section, center section, right section, and then these fader banks with the buttons in each of the sections. So we're going to go into detail with those a little bit more. 1 through 40 is going to be all of our routed inputs that we ever use. Bus masters, we're going to get into in a couple seconds, but the user groups are really what I want to focus on in this video. So user groups are customizable. So if 1 through 40 are static, we can consider them unchanging inputs. User groups allow us to simplify for what we're using on a Sunday morning. So on 1 through 12 fader bank, we've got all our vocals and then all of our instruments. But on a given Sunday, we might have 2 vocals and a few instruments. So this is where our user group comes in. This is customizable. And we're going to use the screen to customize this a little bit with our handy custom button over here. So all you have to do is you want to avoid changing anything in channels 1 through 40 on these fader banks. We only want to change anything in user groups. So in user 1, we're going to click on that and we're going to go over here and say fader routing, and that will light up orange, that custom button that we've made. And as you can see, it pulls up something on the screen here. Now, because we've selected this user group, it's on the correct thing. If you hit fader routing when you're on 1 through 12, you're going to want to make sure that you're not accidentally changing 1 through 12. So here's our entire pool of channels, and then these are what we're changing. But this is showing us 1 through 12, and we don't want to change those. We want to select user 1, and then we want to make sure we're in the right section. So we want to be in the left section, not the center or the right section that's over here. So user 1 in the left section. So as you can see, we've got Brian and Maria here. That shows all of this here as well. And we might want to get rid of electric guitar, and we might want to bring in a second acoustic. Or we're going to get rid of that acoustic and bring in electric 2. Or we're going to get rid of electric 2 and bring in piano. So as you can see, that is changing here. So let's bring electric 1 back in. With this fader routing, you can also select multiple, like that, and then click and drag the first one, and it'll bring all 3 in. And then you can flick them out of the way. So that's in this user 1 here. User 2 has our drums. And this is really helpful, and we don't change this very often because we're able now to have our vocals, and we've got our instruments that we're using, and we can add more instruments right here, and that will all be in this fader section. And then on user 2 of that same fader section, we can have the drums show up. And so if we need to mix the drums for a specific reason, for a specific song, we can pull that up and see that. In the center section, we don't change the user groups very often. Most of the time, what you're going to see in the center section is the bus masters showing up here. And in user 1, the drums are set up as well. So if you want to have the bus master and then in the left section have your instruments, you can toggle back and forth between user 1 and user 2 for drums and band over here. Or you can have vocals, instruments, and then pull up user 1 over here in the center section and have the drums. So the main thing to note about this is we're really only using this custom fader routing button right here to edit user 1 on the left section. And that's going to allow us to pull in extra instruments. We don't want to get rid of accidentally user 1 or buses on the center section. The next thing we're going to look at is how all of this is going to flow. So this isn't necessarily an intuitive setup when you first look at it, but once you've done it once, it starts to make sense. And the way this works is we've set this board up so that this left section here isn't going to feed all the way to the main output. If you look over here on the right side, you've got in the right section, you've got our pastor mic, our announcement mic, our Mac audio, which is any audio that's coming from the Mac computer, the slides computer, and then you've got our mains. And you can see that that's got a green light. So that's our main output audio for everything that we are using. But we don't have these instruments, these individual channels going directly to the mains and out of the speakers. What we have is we've got these instruments and microphones and channels going to buses. And what buses are is they're a grouping, and then those groupings send to the main output over here. So the way this works is for selecting my vocal or the backup vocal or any of our vocal channels, those are going to go to Vox. Vox stands for vocal. So each of these, we can adjust the volume using these faders, and then those are grouped into here, and we can adjust them as a group as for volume. The same with the drums. If we're in user 2, we can mix these to have a good balance of drums, different portions of the drums, so that we can bring up the entire drum kit or bring down the entire drum kit using this. And the same with instruments. If we're back in user 1 in the left section, we can mix all of our instruments, have a really good, we want the bass there, the electric guitar might be a little bit background on one of the songs, but really soaring on another one. But if we need to bring all of the instruments down or up at once, then that's what we use this for. These two right here are also considered buses, but they are slightly different. These are effects buses. So essentially this Vox reverb is the first one, that's vocal reverb, and it's a duplicate of this Vox bus, except that this has an effect on it. And so what that does is it allows vocal reverb to be added or brought down. So if you have this fader all the way down, none of the vocals will have any reverb, but you will still be able to hear the vocals because this fader of the vocal group is up. If you bring this all the way up, then you're going to have a very saturated, very echoey vocal sound. So all of the vocals also send to this bus group. And then right next to it is an instrument reverb group that does the same thing for all of our instruments. So all of our instruments are sent to that group. These are not only very convenient for mixing as we go, being able to get the drums where we like them relative to each other, but then bringing them up or down in the entire mix, but you can also use these buses as mute groups. So if you want to mute everything but the pastor mic, or everything but the announcement mic, you can just mute all the drums, all the vocals, all the instruments. One thing that sometimes we'll forget is we'll mute those groups and forget that the vocals and instruments are also being sent to these reverb groups. And so you won't have the full sound of any of these, but what you will hear is just that little bit of reverb still coming through. So you want to make sure that you mute all of these bus groups if you're going to do something like that. And then the mains, we want to keep everything usually around unity. That's what this 0 is. So you've got 10 on the fader group, you've got negative infinity on the bottom here, and then right in that sweet spot is 0. We usually keep our faders starting around there, and then we adjust from that point. We've got some things set up pretty well for that. So you can see here on the drums, the hi-hat's a little bit higher than unity, but most of them are sort of averaging around unity here. And the same thing goes for the main output over here. So right now it's muted, but if it's unmuted, we want that to be hovering around unity over here along with everything else. So the whole board is set up to kind of have that sweet spot that's easy to navigate to. So that's an overview of how all the audio trickles through. It starts with the channels that then go to the bus groups, both just generic groups and also reverb groups. And then both of those sets of groups will send out to the main output over here which you can essentially just assume is what's going to be heard from the speakers. So that's the sound flow of the Behringer wing.